My daughter and I took what I'm calling a transcendentalist road trip recently, meeting up, beginning at Logan Airport in Boston, and making our way up to Concord, Massachusetts, and the Walden Pond made famous by Henry David Thoreau, and Amherst, where poet Emily Dickinson made her lifelong home in a large yellow mansion. Hundreds of miles and many hours together on picturesque fall back roads with pumpkin and maple syrup stands and more tedious interstate highways. Along the way, catching up on news of her life, my school-age granddaughters' lives, enjoying each other's company, sharing an experience. Until the final 2 hours of conversations on the way back to dropping off the rental car, that last worn-out morning of our shared getaway, depleted of our own mother-child memories and breaking news, with conspicuous silences, ready more than ready to go our separate ways home with 50 miles left to travel. It is then that the talk turned the way it almost always does in our spread-out family, to sentences beginning with, "Can you believe?" and going on to statements like, "Can you believe how messy Linda and Larry's house is? Can you believe how much Bill and Sally fight in front of their kids? Can you believe that Jonah and Sarah are sneaking a dog into their co-op apartment and dogs are not allowed? How long that's going to last?" Or, "I heard this," or, "I heard that." Miles and miles of reports about other people, mostly negative tales. Perhaps true, perhaps not, but accompanied by its own familiar giddy energy and empowerment. The rush that seems to naturally come from being human, as one writer said, from being a social animal, from talking about others in one form or another. Partaking in this, even if I was familiar with a quotation by Rebecca Pidgeon that challenges us to understand how far gossip travels, by suggesting that we take a feathered pillow up on a roof, slice it open, and let the feathers fly away on the wind, then to go and find every single feather and restuff the pillows. We engaged in idle and yet destructive gossip, the same kind that can be found in the recently published children's book, The I Herds by Emily Kilgore, the story of a kid named Mason who was constantly gossiping about everyone in school. Because of this, the I Herds loved him. They sneak up on him and whisper all kinds of rumors in his ear, real things or pretend, innocent or mean, distracting rumors like, "I heard TJ forgot his homework. I heard Amira is scared of thunderstorms. I heard Valeria broke Maya's crayon on purpose." It didn't matter if the I Herds were true or made up, harmless or hurtful. He repeated them right away to as many children as possible. "I heard the principal locks kids in his closet. I heard Isaac eats his own boogers. I heard Sylvie's only friend is a pet squirrel." In this children's story, the rumor-spreading child gets increasingly isolated from other children, except the winged I Herds who buzz in from unknown places and attach themselves to people. The other kids, however, don't want to be around someone who blurts out so many things about them all the time and so unkindly. So Mason is more and more and more alone. He needs to change. He has a choice: to keep the I Herds to himself or to share them with others, to stop repeating words that hurt, to only share the good. I think that children's books are often boldly prophetic, and certainly this one is, with lessons for adults as well. This has been a high season, you have to admit, for I Herds. Gossip, defined often as informal talk about people who are not present, according to New York Times essayist Michael Leibowitz, in their opinion piece on gossip as a universal feature of human culture and gossip abstention. Gossip is condemned by Confucius, who writes that the gossip monger is the outcast of virtue, forbidden in the Quran, described by novelist E.M. Forster in a passage to India as one of those half-alive things that try to crowd out real life. Outlawed, he tells us, by a neighborhood in the Philippines who's made gossip an offense punishable with a fine and an afternoon of picking up litter. Nonetheless, admitted to as a regular practice, albeit a bad one, by half of all Americans, even while more than 2/3 of Americans believe that gossiping is usually or always bad for society. And beyond the standard stuff of gossip, blatantly lying condemnations and violence inciting speech are definitely on the rise. Shortly after the Democratic candidate for president won her nomination and began her whirlwind round of campaign rallies. In fact, during her appearance in Atlanta, she took her opponent straight on for his choices around civil or uncivil discourse, going after him on national television for what he himself has admitted are ad hominem personal attacks. Attacks he says he is absolutely entitled to, blasting his deep lack of respect in his description of her, from dumb as a rock to communist, Marxist, fascist, and worse, sexual innuendos, accusations of murder. With a light and bemused tone but deadly serious message, she tells the crowd that the other candidate and his running mate certainly have a lot to say about her. Some of it just plain weird. Looking straight at him through the camera, she calls him dismissively by his first name and executes this singer. As the saying goes, she says, if you have something to say it to my face. One step in winning the war of the wagging tongue. Say it to my face. An idiomatic expression that conveys a challenge or request for someone to express their thoughts, opinions, or criticisms directly and openly, especially when it is something derogatory, inflammatory, or otherwise negative. As one writer describes this notion of say it to my face, quote, in today's digital age, where communications often take place behind screens and keyboards, the power of direct and face-to-face communication is sometimes overlooked, unquote. The candidate admonishes her opponent to do this, to say it to her face, and the crowd roars, especially, it seems, many of the younger people, perhaps linking this saying to the popular 2023 song Say It to My Face by American singer and songwriter Madison Beer. As the chorus asks, tell me what's the situation. I've been racking my brain, just want some answers. If I ask you, but I know you'll never say it to my face. Say it to my face. Madison Beer, a bat mitzvah Jewish girl whose consciousness around speech may well flow from her religious tradition, one that, in the words of Musar Jewish values teacher Alan Marinus, recognizes that, quote, the ability to utter intelligible speech is not only a distinctive characteristic of the human species, it is truly, truly a wonder. My vocal cords make a series of sounds that create vibrations in the air that enter your ears and are transmitted to your brain, where they are converted back to the meaning that are organized in my brain. How wondrous is that? It is what we humans do most, is speak. It is what distinguishes us from other creatures. Jewish thought and practice is very concerned with the right use of speech because it recognizes that, like any powerful resource, speech can be both creative and healing and dangerous and destructive. This week in the Jewish calendar, we are in the closing days of the month of Elul, a month of introspection called the on-ramp month to the high holy days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's an opportunity for individuals to engage every year in personal stock-taking, reflection on one's actions and behaviors, and making necessary changes, including in our speech. In one Rosh Hashanah reading on hard questions, we are asked to take an annual ethical inventory, and I ask that you join me. How much time did we waste in the year that is now gone? Was there real companionship with our children, or was there a living together and a growing apart? Were we there to help our mates, or did we take them for granted? There are many ways to go in using this actively reflective time to take responsibility, to engage in repentance and repair of our human behaviors and attitudes. Did we live by false values? Did we deceive others? Were we sensitive to the rights and feelings of those who work for us? The kind deed, did we perform it or did we postpone it? And this, the unnecessary cutting remark, did we say it or did we hold it back? Lashon hara, which in Hebrew means literally bad tongue. Lashon hara, anything said that degrades or diminishes the respect the listener has for the subject or causes harm in any way, physically, emotionally, or financially. Speaking bad about someone or yourself, even if it's true. Speaking ill, even if the one being spoken about says they don't mind, even if the listener will not do anything to actively harm the one being spoken about. The speaker still transgresses the serious prohibition of speaking ill. Cursed is one who hurts a friend in private, but one who speaks ill in the presence of the subject transgresses an additional prohibition, causing shame in front of others. A single word of Lashon Hara to only one person is a severe sin, which in Judaism means missing the mark. But the more people who hear it, the worse it is. Before speaking about another person, one should approach that person to determine the exact nature and context of the issue. So central is it to the teachings of Judaism that Michael Leibowitz recalls that teaching against bad speech, especially gossip, was reinforced constantly in their Jewish day school by their parents and even by their classmates. A teaching that reinforces the belief that through one's tongue one can reach the lowest depths of sin, again meaning missing the mark, or reach the highest heights of holiness. With our tongues we can commit 90 transgressions without number, we are told, and with our tongues mitzvahs, good deeds without limits. It is believed by theist Jews that the Holy One, God, forgives all things except Lashon Hara. They believe that God has commanded that in order to become more godly, to live in the image of God, a primary way is to elevate our speech, that through this we become more compassionate people. So rigorous and mostly all-encompassing are the strictures against bad speech about others that this standard is difficult, if not impossible, to observe. The Talmud, or commentaries on Jewish law, concede that virtually everyone will violate the laws of ethical speech at least once a day. Nonetheless, those who try, who make an effort to practice these regulations, will find they soon start speaking in a far fairer manner, the Talmud tells us. Like the child in the story about the eyeherds who was given the choice to keep rumors and lies and other harmful speech to themselves or share them like a pillow full of feathers. So I am setting myself the High Holy Days task this year of choosing silence in the face of verbal abuse instead of doing verbal harm myself, not silencing my outrage at injustices or inequities, not silencing my condemnation of damaging speech by others. In this time of such toxic language and the danger it creates, it seems like a pressing personal goal to say caring words instead of hurtful ones, to lift each other up instead of knocking each other down. That perhaps with practice and patience and empathy, every one of us can do this, at least more of the time, perhaps most of the time. And in the words of the Sufi poet Rumi, before you speak, let your words pass through 3 gates. Is it true? Is it necessary? Or is it kind?